Wait,
Oh,
no,
great.
no, no. Too early?
Perfect.
Okay, well,
Yeah, we're good.
okay. You can start.
Yeah. So this is our first podcast of the Get Together podcast. My name is Thomas. You guys can introduce yourselves.
I'm George.
Uh, okay, we're just doing names. Okay, yeah. I'm Errol.
Okay, and so we're like three gens, the gens that love to talk about tech entrepreneurship and a lot of different concepts, but this is a very laid back podcast and we'll just talk about recent news and stuff. So I think obviously we can start off with Twitter and the whole fiasco that's going on there. So I don't know, we need to give a recap, but essentially there's a lot of changing of like the Twitter's structure that we're seeing from Elon's side. And um, like, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I guess that's what we can discuss right now. Like, what do you guys think so far?
I think you can't put it as black and white, of course, right? I think with a lot of things that Elon does, but just from a perspective of a restructuring, because that's what he offers at the end of the day. It's just a
Mhm.
restructuring of a social media company, and he thinks he knows how to run it best. If you look at it
Yeah.
from that perspective, it's kind of a shit show because the amount of layoffs, I'm not sure
Right.
equates to more efficiency. And most importantly, if he says he wants to build a super app, like the Chinese apps that he mentioned,
Yeah.
all three of us having lived in China, we know that that takes a lot of manpower. That takes a lot of
Yeah.
people. So I don't know how 1 in 4 people can do, like 3 times the work.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
I'm really skeptical about the business model as well. I mean, I'm sure there's ways to generate revenue, but if we look at it from a step back, like we can be inspired by super apps, but we also have to realize like people come to apps sometimes for very specific reasons. If there's a lot of history towards that app, it's very hard to like change. So even the pricing model, like the whole verified blue thing, I'm not sure if like people are on board, even if it creates more features for say content creators or whatever. Like it's not there was a tweet like a couple weeks ago from like what is the guy? The guy who writes books is like King Stephen King. Wait, yeah, it's Stephen, right?
Thinking, yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, why do I have to pay $8 to like give the news about my new books? Like, it's kind of dumb. So I don't know how that fits in, but it's kind of, I would agree, it's sort of a shit show right now.
yeah, but it's like with the whole like Twitter blue thing. I mean, at this point, I just feel like he's kind of just like seeing what works, like what business model would work, because he quickly implemented it, and I don't know how long it took for him to take it back. But after all the impersonation and all that, he was like, "Yeah, we can't do this right now, so we're gonna delay it for I think like a month or two."
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, at this point, like he's not hard set on one business model or another. I think he's just
mhm,
kind of throwing it out there, seeing what sticks, and just hoping for the best. But I mean, at the same time, too, we're talking about the layoffs at Twitter, and I made myself go on Twitter. Like I say, made myself, but okay, I went on Twitter every single day since
yeah,
Elon took over, and it's like 70% of the staff was cut, or laid off, or just left. And at the same time, Twitter is still working. So it kind of makes you think, what were all those people doing? And like even as a software engineer myself, I'm thinking like if you have Twitter, the damn app does not change. Like it's been the same relatively for the past like 5, 10 years. And I'm just it's having me wonder about what all those people were even doing in the first place. And I think it's very manageable with the team that they have now. It's a little too early to say, but I think what Elon Musk is doing isn't as bad as what a lot of the public, I believe, thinks it is.
yeah. I don't know if this leads into a segue of like how like certain engineers didn't exist in a company. Like obviously, I think the old version, or even now, even still now, like the idea of having more engineers is just more redundancy, right?
Mhm.
Especially like in a big company, like you want to have people that are optimizing rather than just creating the very bare like necessities of an app. So maybe you don't, as a user, like see these increases or these better performances because they might not be so like in front of your face, but maybe it's like, oh, 5 seconds versus 1 second load time, and the change to go from 5 seconds to 1 second, it's like a couple really top tier engineers that can only do that sort of performance increase. So I
And
don't know,
let's
maybe they
see.
fired those people, I don't know.
Let's see what happens when there's some issue, some breakdown. If
Yeah.
Mhm.
Twitter
Yeah.
goes like offline, like how long will it take them to fix it? If they had more people, probably faster, right?
Right.
That's
So
very true.
that's
Do you think the
makes
uptime is a thing that like they should be worried about though? Because if I think from Elon's point of view, it's like, oh, this is a new company. Like even though we have the name Twitter, it's like
100%.
this is a startup, right? So even
Because
if
he's
they
never
like
taken
fail,
over anything. He just builds it kind of
right,
from scratch or from a very early
right.
stage.
Like he
So
doesn't
it's
care if
as a
it goes to
startup.
crap if it's going to keep improving, right? Like it can be down for a couple of hours. Like it's not end of the world.
But can
I
you
think what
operate a big company like that? You know, like
I
a
don't
big tech
know, right?
company?
Do you think institutional investors in like those banks that are kind of just waiting for their money like would be fine with it? Like I think that's the question, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I guess this segues again, just like going out to more big tech in general. Like there's a lot of layoffs that have been happening in general from companies every single week. Obviously we're seeing new news. Is there any new companies that are getting stripped of employees that you guys are aware about? I know like, you know, Twitter and Facebook and all these other places, they've been the recents, but like, is there anything in this last week or in last 2 weeks that have been like, oh no, like how did they cut these amount of people from that company? I saw Stripe, for example.
Yeah,
Stripe
Stripe.
can't
Fintech, I think,
30%
got hit the
something.
hardest. I think
Yeah.
fintech got
I don't
hit
even
the
understand
hardest.
that. How does that work?
Valuations were way too high last year. They were
Really?
like through the roof
Okay.
insane. So
Yeah.
it just makes sense. And even with those last year valuations, they were still
Mhm.
out hiring. You know, people, you know, a lot of
Yeah.
investors they were questioning the hiring last year. In this market, it made zero sense. So they had to cut it back down to pre-2020 levels, I think.
Interesting. Because I thought that the like say Stripe, for example, right? They were operating on like for sure net profit, right? Like it's not like they don't have a budget to extend or have a rainy day fund to like have even with these surplus of employees. I would expect that considering it is more fintech related, like they should probably know their financials more and like how to operate even in an environment like this. I don't know, like it seems a little bit bizarre, like oxymoronic.
Well,
Uh,
fintech companies, kind of by default, have their financials, understanding of their financials a lot worse than other industries because nobody
wait, what?
else operates at such low margins. Like nobody else
Mhm.
operates at such low margins. So, you know, I think there's a lot of very questionable stuff on the finance side in terms of how fintech companies operate. Like all the
Yeah,
wallets, all the P2P things, were they ever going to make money? It's a big question.
yeah. Do you think they will make money? I mean, like what does fintech look like today? What is the landscape? Obviously, there's like crypto side, but I feel like that's a wall that's like or a subset that's very specific. Like, what is the what is because you're obviously working on a fintech, right? Like, what is the concept of fintech right now? I know there's like always partnership with banks, like that's a really important thing, but we have a variety of types of things that are trying to address different problems. So, like, what is I guess the most fundamental fintech that you see to be really important, George?
Yeah, I I mean, wallets are definitely important, and everything from open banking to buy now, pay later definitely has place in our everyday life. The other
Mm,
question is how much value do we put towards it? And the regulators are still there. They're just as vicious as they've always been. You know, always hard to deal with. Customers are also still there, but maybe not as willing to spend as much as last year. But the investor confidence has eroded for sure. So all the
mhm.
core products that would still exist, there would still be a wallet, there would still be P2P payments, BNPL even. It's just
Yeah.
the valuations are going to go down. There's going to be less people working in the fintech space. To be honest,
Mhm.
I don't know why fintech needs to have as much of a workforce as a bank. I thought the value proposition of fintech was that they can cut down on the unnecessary employees and then actually create a more efficient product. But over time, everyone forgot about that part. Everyone started out hiring, and they just turned into another bank. So it's healthy to an extent.
Mm. I see. Errol,
Mm.
you've been kind of silent. Do you have any I
About
like
fintech,
maybe not just fintech, but I feel like
I'd
you know what my worry is? My worry is like not just fintech, maybe because of this whole fiasco with FTX, and we can like go into that. Because these things are all like kind of stuck together, like fintech is sorry, crypto is a subset of fintech to a certain degree, right? We can kind of argue that that's the case, but then crypto usually is paired of or funding Web3 stuff that's like new tech as well. And so when we look at it, right, like a lot of stuff that happens in the upper chains of fintech and even crypto affect the new technologies that maybe don't even, they shouldn't be decoupled with it, but they are, and so they suffer, right? I don't know how that's going to like affect or like blow out butterfly effect in the next couple months. I'm just really worried that like the whole Web3 concept is so on the back burner that will die.
Well, it's not. I feel like at this point now, with like, what George was talking about in terms of just fintech, buy now, pay later, and even what you mentioned with crypto and Web3, I think for the next like 5 years, maybe, just due to more like economic conditions, general funding, I think it's not going to be so much of innovating like fresh new products. I think this is going to be now, okay, we have some technology like crypto, like blockchain, like buy now, pay later. What's now the next step up? What can we now do with this? Because I can talk about buy now, pay later specifically because I actually applied to a lot of jobs that did buy now, pay later. And I can tell you right now that they all just jumped on the trend and there's really nothing that differentiates any of them. So they're not, I don't see them having anything new in the next few years, but it's just going to be now, okay, how can we be different than them? How can we be unique? How can we be innovative? So it's more on, yeah, I don't think it's going to be that much creation. I think it's going to be now, how do we have a higher quality? And finding out.
Okay, so like cutting off fat, just like the guys that it's either vaporware or realware, right? Like
yeah, and it's like cutting off fat is always what happens. That's what I mean in terms of like general market conditions too. Like we're just talking about tech layoffs. Yeah, we're gonna cut away the fat. Even Twitter too, we're gonna cut away the fat. And that's just how it is, because in conditions like this, you really have to make sure that you're lean and then you can scale quickly. And I feel as if right now, or not right now, but in the past few years, there was just so much money being thrown at particularly startups. I know George knows this, that people were just hiring. People were just saying, yeah, we don't have to be that different. We're gonna raise $100 million, even though we don't even have a product yet. It's just things like that that are just have created created the scenario we are in now, and that's why it's going to be kind of lackluster for new ideas going forward.
Yeah. To go off that, I think there was too much digitalization in the last 2 years in the first world countries in the West. Like, no, did we ever really need a 15-minute delivery service? Like, would something fundamentally happen in our lives if it took 18 minutes or 20? But somehow that turned into I think, $20 billion industry just in the US alone. And all of those are shutting down. And that's not a problem. That's a good thing, right? That's the market being very efficient and pretty much cutting out what was access. But the problem is that a lot of the trends in the last 2 years was the lower tier countries, the third world countries, getting access to the core infrastructure. Delivery services, we were in the social commerce space. Kind of, we've launched it during this period, during 2021, when things were arguably quite good. And then all of those companies had to also scale back. Like I went to India in October. I met a friend of mine, founder of Dealshare, which is a social commerce app. They're one of the only social commerce companies in emerging markets that have retained their valuation and have actually increased a little bit. And that was only because they're, approaching profitability. But everyone else has pretty much also imploded. And that's really bad. The next billion internet users are going to come a little bit later than we think because of this downturn.
Yeah. That's a very interesting concept that like maybe the people that benefit the most are the ones that like just start using the bare services that we take for granted. I don't okay, anyways.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, is that a good thing that most of the valuations or maybe investment, even now, right? I feel like they're still trying to figure out, hey, is this new customer segment the better like place to go to invest in? Or is it like the new tech that's maybe taking what we see as old and trying to reinvent it? So like my concept of Web3, right? It's not just the normal sorts of websites or whatever. It's like new, faster, more impressive architecture for a website, or maybe the way that things run, right? Like, is that, where does that fit in? Are the people going to like abandon that idea, or is investment going to dry up there, or is it like just on the down low, or is it going to just die? Like,
Well,
I don't know.
I do have to say though that Web3 as a whole, I think a key part of the hype for it is people just want to make money. I think
Mm.
that's a very big thing that actually kept me away from Web3 in the first place. Was we have all these advocates saying, hey, Web3 is the next big thing, it's going to be fast, it's going to be better privacy. But at the end of the day, I don't think that is what those developers and advocates are really believing in, if that makes sense. I think they're just like, yeah, it's a way for us to make more money. I think that's the primary focus because there was so much money in cryptocurrency. And
Right.
I mean, because that wasn't the main belief, I know that there are some people in Web3 who really do believe in that. We have really smart people like Vitalik, of course, and the guys even at Cardano, which tremendous work to them. It's just, I feel like right now, because the essence, the foundation isn't there, I don't really know where Web3 is going to go, but I think definitely the hype is dying down. And unless there's a big turn directly in like cryptocurrency where the prices now skyrocket, I think that's the only thing that's going to make Web3 a little bit more popular now.
Yeah.
Not just
What do you
investments.
guys think the fallout of FTX? Like, we're 2 weeks after this whole fiasco, right? Obviously no one has gotten their money back, so obviously I don't think that would be the case. It's surprising how the guy, as Sam Bankman-Fried, he's not in jail yet because he's in the Bahamas and they just have no jurisdiction. But what do you guys think about this whole thing? Like, what is our convo to this so far?
It's a surprise, by the way, that he's not in jail or at least in
Right?
custody, awaiting
Right? Yeah.
his trial, because very little difference with every other Ponzi scheme that wasn't crypto.
Mhm.
And they got arrested.
Yeah,
Right?
but he hasn't, right? There's like this whole conspiracy that, given that his parents and everything are all kind of interconnected, MIT, even the SEC, all of these things, like it's not easy to break through. Like, is this a political issue? Is this something that it's kind of problematic that he's not getting arrested because maybe something is protecting him?
There were
I mean,
some
he's even
donations, right? I read about donations to the Democrat Party that he was making.
Yes, there was a whole, I think FTX actually did invest. I don't remember the amount. It was a significant amount of money sent to the Democratic Party, and now, because they have to reel back, then there's not much they can do. But at the same time, it seems very ominous that somebody that's giving all this money is maybe not being arrested, because why arrest the guy who gave you a lot of money, right? Like, that makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah.
But
But
I will say though that apparently I heard that he was going to be subpoenaed. What the fuck?
Subpoenaed.
Subpoenaed.
he has a subpoena. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I
I'm
didn't know
sorry.
that. Okay.
It's
Go on.
early. So he will be back in the U.S. and I don't know. I don't think they're gonna arrest him because, as you just mentioned, they are a lot of these Democrats. They got a lot of money from him. So I don't know if anything is actually gonna happen. I think it might just be more for publicity, just for show, being like, yeah, he's being held accountable. Look, guys, he's coming to Congress. He's telling us about his problems, all of that. But I don't think anything else is gonna come from it.
Maybe it's
Unfortunately.
just taking time, right? Because here's the thing, right? The last fiasco with a big company was definitely Elizabeth Holmes. And she just, like, recently, last month, right,
Yeah,
got sentenced. Like, she got her sentence, right? She has what, like 10 years of prison time or whatever.
good shit.
Uh,
Yeah.
so it takes time, and it was like 3-ish years before this whole thing like came to a close. So maybe it's that, but we can't say for certain, right? Like, we really screwed up if, like, by the time he gets arrested, it's like we're all 30 years old or something like that.
Yeah. And
You have
then
to track all the money and the proof, right?
that's what I was gonna say. Like, then you have to ask yourself if he now gets arrested and he's held guilty and liable for like 10 years down the line, well,
Yeah.
all that money's now gone. 100%. Like, good luck trying to get that shit back. But if they were to take action now, it's still unlikely, and that's just a sad truth, that any of the customers are going to get their money back. But it's much more likely than if it was 10 years down the line. So
Yeah.
that's why action going fast, I think in this case is definitely a big benefit, and they should. But I personally as well don't know enough information about it to really say why they're not actively pursuing him right now. If it is just donations, then well fucked.
Yeah. So segueing into another topic that's kind of been reaching out this week was the whole introduction of Chat GPT. Oh my gosh, I'm fumbling my words here. Chat GPT from OpenAI. Maybe for context, because I don't know if everyone here knows the news. So a new tech model, GPT model, right? A transformer model was released where you can be able to ask this model to code certain things or give you instructions on how to code something. Which, you know, obviously every developer that's looking at this, they're like, oh shit, is my like job you know, kind of an issue now because they can just give me instructions on how to code it. I guess we can start off with like Errol, since you might know about this. Like, what is your thoughts on it so
A
far?
question is it any way different than Substack where you just search up the answer? Like,
It's not really different, I guess. It's like OpenStack or Substack, like those more are like are forum questions, right? Like forum and answer. This is more like, oh, tell me how to code this entire app, and then it'll give you procedural instructions, right? Whereas maybe for you know, Stack Overflow, they'll give you like a snippet of like this one specific problem and how to like debug or fix that problem.
I see.
Yeah. But also Chat GPT as well. It can also like give you like poems if you ask it. It's not just for
Yeah.
like coding, you know, like if you want to my coworker showed me, not coworker, my manager, well, I guess coworker too, showed me a snippet where he asked the Chat GPT for a poem about a penguin drinking coffee. And it's like it's like pretty good. You get some wild stuff on there too. But just from the coding aspect as well, no, I'm not worried. You know, I mean, how often does a technology come along that's like it's gonna replace everyone in this industry? Like, nah, I always just tend to brush that off. But in this case specifically as well, a lot of my work that I'm doing for software engineering is it's working with really big systems. And the fact is, this chat does not understand our entire system. You can't. You cannot tell me the most efficient way to do this because only I would know that. Or not even me. I would have to actually go into the code base and learn it myself. So I think it's just such a complex thing. And of course, you don't want to now, you know, download all the files or share your GitHub to the AI for them to read it all because that's just massive privacy issues. So I don't really see it as that big of an issue with my job. I don't really think it's going to be truly revolutionary in software engineering, but I think it's just something that's nice to have and is a little bit better maybe than like Stack Overflow.
Cool to think about though. Just imagine the guys that got laid off and they're never coming back. The jobs are just gonna be replaced. They're permanently out of the market. They like fix this issue with like maybe federated learning, so that they're able to read GitHub. But obviously that's in the very long run.
Yeah. It's crazy how we all like started from honestly an NLP venture, right? Site. I feel like the tech has both seemingly improved, but at the same time has not improved, if you catch my drift. So like there's some things where it might not know the context to the situation. And this goes for GPT, it goes for a lot of different things. Recently, in the last couple months, I don't know if you guys are aware of something called GitHub Copilot. So it's like this new thing that GitHub released. It's like $10 a month. And it, while you're typing code on VS Code, because VS Code is also open source, but is owned by Microsoft, which is the company that owns GitHub, right? So they basically allowed for this integration where when you start typing stuff, it would kind of give you some auto complete snippet to like just use that as the code, and maybe it does well, right? But there's like a lot of exactly what you're saying, George. There's like actually some legal problems right now because of this federated learning problem. People are like, wait, how do you get this code? And they're like, oh, well, we used all the open source community projects. And they're like, but at the same time, you didn't give us any credit to these projects. So now this product is just really, really confusing. Like you're taking code and not giving credit. Is that really legal? Everyone's like, what is going on with that? So there's also a lawsuit, if I remember. But the point is like, it's like there's not a guarantee that people embrace the NLP side of things. And at the same time, the snippets themselves, they're very like one-off. They're all based off derivations of other projects, but they don't know the specific context to your own project. I guess my point to this is just, I don't know, like I feel like there's a struggle between what is AI's smartness, their capabilities, the improvements that you see, and then the context that they have. So do you guys think that that would be something that can be fixed, or is something that just has to exist and we have to deal with? Like that's just the extent of AI right now. Like that's the only thing we can hope for, that it will just do things a little bit more easy, but we'll still need to do a lot more work.
Yeah. I mean, Errol, you can expand on it. I think you already said it, that it's hard.
Well, I'm just thinking on it a little bit, but I mean, because well, first of all, just a disclaimer, I'm a software engineer. I love tech. I love software. I'm not huge into AI just because it's so fucking complex.
Yeah.
You know, there's just so much going on, and I definitely do feel like it's making improvements over time. But I still feel like at this point, it's AI as a whole, it's not being used as I think people 5 years ago would have thought, or 10 years ago, right? I think there's still, you know, a lot of like niche cases for it. Even that's like not entirely true, but I feel like it's definitely underperformed in what in the capacity that a lot of people would have thought it did.
Especially like us, we saw how in 2018, how everyone was going crazy over it in China, saying, you know, it's going to be like everywhere throughout our like life, everyday life, we're going to be interacting with AI, like Kai Fu coming to our university. None of it materialized. You're right.
That's the thing, but it's still very useful. Like AI is being used so much in so many businesses, and it's still being utilized, but just not. I guess it just underperformed the hype, and that's typically what happens with technology.
It could be a hockey stick effect as well. Like as with most things in tech, it's going to take some time until it like actually takes off, and then very soon we're going to be kind of discussing a more existential crisis. Discussed it a lot.
Oh yeah. I don't know if I want to expose your thoughts on this podcast, but
yeah, let's not.
let's say that for another time, maybe. But if
I'm very pro AI.
Yeah, we'll put it that way. You're very pro AI.
Broco's basculus
versus pro human, you know.
Yeah. To all our overlords in the future, yes, we love AI.
But that's what I'm saying. Like if it's like a hockey stick, then you know it's gonna shoot up, obviously in adoption, in its strength, and we just have to make sure that this goes into a little more philosophical aspect, but we have to make sure that there's some ethics that keeps up with the AI, or some regulation. Regulation at this point is, I'll be honest, with the whole FTX thing, and so many other things that's happening in crypto, I have no faith in regulation going forward for any technology. I really don't, because the government just moves so slowly. China can make it obvious, they can move a little faster, but even that too. And I really feel like there's a very key aspect of the developers and the entrepreneurs and the business leaders who are working with AI and developing it and maintaining it, integrating it with their businesses. I think it's their responsibility to now not focus on regulation, because that's not going to come, but to have their own ethics, own standards. And that is asking for a lot. And of course, that will vary greatly, but I think that's the only thing we can do if we really want to make sure that you know, AI doesn't completely dominate us, become our overlords, which some people may think is a good thing, but I think we have to use AI and new technology responsibly, and I think it always starts at the business, not at the government level.
One other thing that I want to touch on related to FTX and related to kind of blockchain and AI is that I've noticed there's a very big difference in terms of what's discussed in the US versus the rest of the world. Like FTX was definitely like the key topic of discussion in the last 2 weeks. And then last month has been Twitter in the US. But throughout the world, you know, discussion is very different. And I think fundamentally in the US, there's a bit of a breakaway in terms of where people think innovation is going and where they're willing to put their money towards. Like there's a lot more of an effort on deep tech. There's still a lot of interest in blockchain. Never, like, even considering the whole fall off, there's still a lot of interest in blockchain, while the rest of the world is doing completely, different things that are more focused on the B2C space, that are more focused on, the current everyday
Infrastructure.
life and
So,
infrastructure.
yeah, right. And also marketing, right? Like, to, I guess, segue in the last thing for AI, it's like, look at Jasper AI. I don't know if you guys know what that thing is. It's basically a like marketing photo copywriting system thing where you just tell the AI to like write something for you, an email or something that's like very marketing centric. So maybe there are use cases and it's just going to take some time, but it has to be maybe based on like whether or not it generates revenue or not. I don't know.
Yeah. Speaking of downturns and the situation right now, Thomas, you're kind of in a very interesting position because you're doing something in the travel industry that is definitely picking up pace after last year and 2020 for sure. But at the same time, there's a whole tech sell-off. So how's that space performing? How's the space that connects the real economy that is doing well with tech that is right now, going through a tough time?
I'm gonna be real with you. I've been looking at like competitors and investors. I haven't really seen so much news that is like astoundingly getting prepped for the future. So like that's a little bit sad, but at the same time, I think it takes some time. They're waiting for that demand to really materialize because people say, "Oh yeah, I want to travel," until they travel, right? Like they travel like, a lot. I don't think the demand is actually seen as demand yet. It's more like prepped demand, right? So maybe that's what they're waiting for. But if you're talking about like whether or not this tech will introduce new realms or new experiences, I feel like that's definitely going to be the case. Like there needs to be improvements across the board for even the more mundane entertainments that we have in our lives and everyday lives, not just like TV and stuff like that, but like things to do, right? So I think that's my close off. Is there anything else that you guys have to say about anything? Like this is our last 2 minutes or 1 minute, so we can just close it here.
Happy we got this first podcast started.
Yeah,
I like the
we'll
format.
definitely think about how to make it obviously better, but I think this is a good start.
Yeah, it's definitely a great start. And yeah, I'm excited to keep going forward with this as well. Every week we want to do this.
Yeah.
Same time, I think. So yeah, I mean, excited to see what else we talk about, guys.
Cool. All right. Have a
Next
nice day, guys.
Saturday.
All right. How do we end these things? Just kidding.
I think we just
Yeah.
ended.